Hey everyone, we'll get started in just a moment. All right. Well, welcome everyone. We're so glad you could join us again for our final webinar of our Fall 2025 series. My name is Becky Kimowitz. I'm the Executive Director of the Skin Cancer Foundation, and today I'm joined by Dr. Elizabeth Buzney, who is a member of our Photobiology Committee. And we are going to have a conversation today about incidental sun exposure, what it is, why people should be aware of it, and what you can do daily to keep your skin protected. So as always, we'll start with a few housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded. All registrants will receive a link to the recording in a day or two. You've all been muted, and if you have questions during the webinar, please drop them into the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We'll do our best to answer them at the end of the discussion, and if we don't get to your question, we'll be sure to answer it via email. Also, by registering for this event, you have been added to our monthly newsletter. We have lots of information in there around updates from the Skin Cancer Foundation, as well as all the latest info about skin cancer prevention, early detection, and treatment. So keep an eye out for that in your inbox. All right, so with that, I think we can go ahead and get started. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Elizabeth Buzney. As I mentioned, Dr. Buzney has been a member of the Skin Cancer Foundation's Photobiology Committee for 7 years. And when she's not helping us out, she is the Assistant Professor of Dermatology at Harvard Medical School, Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. Dr. Buzney, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate you taking time.
Thank you.
So I think to kick off our conversation, to help kind of frame things, maybe you could start by giving us a little overview of UV light, ultraviolet radiation, how it reaches the earth and damages the skin.
Sure. Thanks so much. And thank you, Becky. That was a very nice introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's always lovely to work with the Skin Cancer Foundation, which is such an incredible organization. So so this is a great place to start. So ultraviolet radiation reaches the Earth from the sun. The rays travel through space and the Earth's atmosphere. And there are also artificial sources of UV radiation, like the rays emitted from tanning beds. Now, in looking at this slide that diagrams the UV light spectrum, we go from left to right. First, we have the UVB rays. This tiny portion of the spectrum causes sunburn and damage to DNA and skin cells, which then can lead to skin cancer. And then if we go over, the next segment is the UVA rays. Those are responsible for tanning in the sun or in a tanning bed. And these rays contribute to skin cancer and premature signs of aging. UVA rays are prevalent in all kinds of weather and can penetrate glass. And if we move over again, visible light is next. This is the Roy G. Biv part of the spectrum that you can see. And these rays are often, we are often what we call blue light. And exposure to them can lead to wrinkles and other signs of aging, but we don't believe that this leads to skin cancer. And then the last section starts at the outer red edge of our visible light, and that's called infrared radiation, or IR, and it has the longest wavelengths in the spectrum. While this light is invisible to human eyes, you can sometimes feel it as heat. And there's not yet a clear consensus on how IR affects skin, but scientists are conducting more research to determine how much our skin needs protection against these wavelengths. So this is an ongoing area of exploration. Now, our talk today is going to focus on the first two segments, UVA and UVB, as these are the rays known to cause skin cancer.
And as we said, I think seeing that spectrum really makes it easy to understand how we are exposed to UV radiation daily, often without even being aware of it. So,
Right.
with that in mind, let's dive into this idea of incidental sun exposure.
Yeah.
How do you introduce the subject to your patients?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So, thanks to the Skin Cancer Foundation's decades of public education and work on this subject, I think people, for the most part, understand that they need to use sunscreen and cover up with clothing and hats and sunglasses for prolonged exposure to the sun, like a day at the beach. However, I find that people are less aware of how incidental sun exposure happens and what the long term effects of it can be. Incidental sun exposure happens anytime you're exposed to the sun, all year round and in any type of weather. This is the type of sun exposure that isn't intentional or planned for. Like things like short trips outside. If you're walking through a large parking lot, if you're shopping at an outdoor market, you're walking your dog, you're going to and from your car. And this type of sun exposure can even happen inside if you're spending time near a window in your home or in your car.
And I think that's something a lot of people don't really think about.
Mhm.
In our educational efforts at the foundation, we work really hard to teach people that sun protection is seasonless, right? That you need this all year round. So, how
Yeah.
do you explain that idea in your practice to your patients?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's so important to be aware of this incidental sun exposure. And incidental sun exposure is as damaging as prolonged exposure. And this is what I try to get across to my patients. It might even be more damaging since people are taking precautions and protecting their skin when they know they will be out in the sun for extended periods of time. So, for example, I have patients that say, oh, I always cover up when I go to the beach, but they're not necessarily thinking about everything else. And sun damage can occur with exposure of less than a minute. And then the damage can continue to evolve well after the exposure stops. Sun damage is cumulative, it adds up. Um, a lifetime of incidental exposure can compound damage and increase your skin cancer risk. I have a lot of patients that come in and they say, "Oh, I was so good this past summer. Why am I still developing skin cancer?" And again, this is exactly illustrating this point. It's this years and years of cumulative sun exposure, even when you don't know you're getting sun exposure. So I always tell my patients, if it's not dark out like night, there's UV light. So if you can see, then you're being exposed to UV rays. Um, and then I think our next slide is actually a great visual of what can happen to your skin after a lifetime of everyday exposure. Yeah, there it is. So this is just an amazing picture. This is a 69-year-old man. He spent 28 years driving a delivery truck. And you can see that one side of his face is lined and aged and damaged from hours spent inside the cab of his truck next to the window. One side is smoother and healthier looking, smoother and healthier looking due to its facing away from the window and being out of the line of direct sun. And it's pretty obvious which side is which, right? The left side of his face is the one that has been exposed to 28 years of being next to that window glass and getting that cumulative sun exposure. And studies have shown that in the U.S. there's more incidence of cancer on the left arm than on the right arm, and that's due to driving. Um, and in addition, so this isn't a car, but people are always surprised to learn that sun exposure can happen inside as well. So we all have examples of this in our own homes. But the slide is another example of incidental sun damage while inside. So this is a copy of the 2021 Skin Cancer Foundation journal that was exposed to sun while it was inside. And it sat on a desk near a window for a couple of weeks. And you can see that the color of the journal changed from green to blue, and that the color of the hands as well in this picture changed. And these changes show sun exposure. And we've all seen the effects of sun coming into our homes, right? Your rug turns white in an area, your couch turns white in an area. UV is coming in through your windows and bleaching your fabrics. It's also affecting your skin if you're next to the window as well.
I remember I had a navy blue sofa once, and one arm of it that was in the window, it was completely bleached. It was like light blue. It was it's kind of wild to think about if you're sitting on that couch, if that's what's happening to that, to the fabric, imagine what's happening to your face.
It is
Um,
so true. Yeah.
so maybe we could dive in a little bit deeper about that. The idea of being exposed to UV rays when you're indoors.
Yeah. So people don't realize that sun exposure can happen inside. Um, Not all UV radiation from the sun stays outdoors, and you might think that the windows are preventing the sun from harming your skin, because the cold isn't coming through or the heat isn't coming through. But the truth is that UVA rays can pass through the window glass and reach you indoors, at home and on the road. And this puts you at risk for that same premature aging and skin cancer that we saw in that photo of the truck driver. If you're regularly sitting near a sunny window at home or at work or spending a lot of time behind the wheel, the UV rays are hitting your skin and doing damage.
I hope we've gotten that point across to everyone about what incidental sun exposure
Yeah.
is and where it can hit you. So let's talk about preventing it. How do we make sure we minimize that risk of incidental sun exposure?
That's such a good question. It's not easy,
Mm.
because again, it really requires a lifestyle change to think about how we're protecting ourselves in this way. It's just different. Um, the first step is being aware of it, and being aware of that incidental sun exposure. Once you think of sun protection as a daily habit, as opposed to only thinking about it when you're outside for extended periods of time, then you're already taking a step in the right direction. Um, Daily sun protection is the best way to avoid that incidental sun exposure. And we recommend, clothing is the best first line of defense. The protection that clothing offers is constant and it doesn't wear off if it gets wet, and you don't need to reapply it. And it's also easier to see where exactly you're covered. We recommend 50 UPF or higher for best protection. And today there's a lot of accessories that are made in UV protective fabric, like gaiters and arm and leg and hand coverings too. Um, I recommend clothing all the time to my patients. It's not the most fun recommendation, but it's really the most effective. And I don't know if this matters that much, but financially, actually, it's also a great investment as well, because that piece of clothing is going to be with you for a prolonged period of time, hopefully. So that's something to consider as well. I do want to do a deep dive on clothing for a minute. We know that many times manufacturers don't indicate the UPF rating on a garment. So it's hard to know what's going to be the most protective. To ensure you're getting the best protection, look for the Skin Cancer Foundation's seal of recommendation. When you see it on a garment, you know that it's meeting our minimum standards for safe and effective sun protection. But keep in mind that all clothing offers a level of protection, whether or not it has a UPF rating. So I love this picture of these two basketball players. Um, for example, the player on the left is wearing a white t-shirt that probably has a UPF rating of about 7, whereas the player on the right is wearing a long sleeve denim shirt. And this is rated at an extremely high UPF, like 1700 UPF. So no sun is getting through that shirt, whether or not it's labeled as UPF protective fabric or not. So the characteristics in fabric to look for are the following. So dark and bright colors absorb UV rays better than light colors. Densely woven fabric like denim, canvas, wool, or other synthetic fibers have more protection than sheer, thin, or loosely woven fabric, and that's common sense. That's what you would think. Unbleached cotton can act as a UV absorber as well. And shiny fabric like polyester, lightweight satin, and silks reflect radiation and can be highly protective. Also, high-tech fabrics treated with chemical UV absorbers, whiteners, and dyes can also be used to improve a fabric's UPF rating. So there's a lot that you can do when you're choosing your fabric, again, even if it's not specifically designated UPF fabric, to make really good choices for sun protective clothing. Of course, that clothing has to cover all the parts of your body that are being sun exposed. It doesn't help if you're wearing a short sleeve shirt that's amazingly UPF protective if your forearms aren't being protected, et cetera. So again, just, of course, common sense as well. So I love this slide. So sun protection isn't just for the beach. So other ways to ensure that you're protected, wear a hat while outside. And we suggest a hat with a minimum 3-inch brim all around the circumference so it covers your ears and the back of your neck as well as your face. This is something that I go through with patients all the time. We don't recommend baseball style caps unless they have a permanently attached drape that covers the back of the neck or the ears. Baseball caps are really meant to protect your eyes and shield your eyes from sun exposure, but it leaves the lower half of your face and your neck unprotected. And so you may not be seeing the sun because you're under the brim of the hat, but it's getting you right down here on the base of your neck and your ears and your lower face. And I see that all the time in people who have worn baseball caps for their whole lives. What else? Wearing sunglasses to protect your eyes and the skin around them is really helpful. Look for lenses that block a minimum of 99% of both UVA and UVB radiation, and go for larger frame styles or ones that wrap around. And again, the more skin you cover, the better off you'll be. You can also get clear lenses for reading, for regular glasses that are coated with UV protection, so you can keep your eyes safe even when you don't have tinted lenses on. And then once you're covered, ideally, once you're covered in fabric and lenses, then you can apply sunscreen to the skin that's left exposed. And use one that's a minimum SPF of 30 and put on a thick coat, like you're painting a wall. Put it on your skin and rub it in. And typically what I tell my patients is thick and often, or what I actually tell them is more thick and more often. So that's really the key.
Yeah, that's really great information. That's something we talk about all the time here around the importance of a complete sun protection strategy. I think everybody gets kind of hung up on sunscreen and
Yeah.
how much to use and how often to apply and that sort of thing. But to your point, clothing, hats, sunglasses, seeking shade, all of those things, they really all need to work together to keep your
Yeah.
skin safe. So let's talk about when you're inside your car or your home. What sort of things can you do that if you are spending a lot of time near a window? And we're not telling everybody they need to wear a wide brimmed hat while they're sitting on their living room sofa. What are some other things that they can do?
Yeah, absolutely. That would not be practical. That would not be a practical suggestion.
Yeah.
So UV radiation can pass through window glass. Untinted window glass does block UVB radiation, but it leaves UVA radiation to come through the window and damage your skin. Now, there's something called solar window films, and when those are applied to windows, they block 99% of UVA and UVB light for more complete protection. Window films have UV light inhibitors that are mixed in during manufacturing, and you can find them in clear or translucent shades as well as tinted. All window films can provide a degree of UV protection, but many films are solely for design or darkening. The films that are marketed as solar film will block UVA and UVB rays. Now, by law, car front windshields have a shatterproof film that's applied in the factory. And this film also happens to block 99% of UVA and UVB light. So that's great. Your front windshield, you're protected from, but the side windows and the back windows are not protected. And this leaves, you from the side, or kids, babies and children, anyone else in the back seat, exposed to those UVA rays that are coming through. So again, an ideal recommendation would be to have window tint installed on the driver's and passenger side windows, the rear windows, and then also the sunroof for maximum protection. Window tint is an aftermarket product that you can have applied at a professional installer. And again, you need to specifically look for solar or UV protective film, since some films are just dark and not protective. When in doubt, you can look again for the Skin Cancer Foundation's seal of recommendation. Each state has its own laws governing the amount of tint allowed and on which windows of the car that it can be used. And your local distributor should know what's allowed in your state.
Yeah, this is a subject that we paid a lot more attention to in recent years, right? There's a lot more education out there around window tint and solar film and how it works to help protect you and your family and your home and your car. Any other things that people can do around their home to minimize exposure?
Yeah, sure. I think, drapes, solar window shades, awnings over your windows or on the exterior of your building, all of that can be really helpful. Um, so yeah, there's lots of things that can be done.
Yeah. So, beyond all of these ways to protect yourself, I'm thinking about when you're kind of caught in the
Mhm.
sun, when you don't plan to be,
Yeah.
those sneaky UV rays. What are some of these situations where people might get caught without sun protection? Things people aren't thinking of. What are you hearing from your patients?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I think one thing is to be doubly careful near water, sand, snow, and even asphalt, because
Mm.
the rays reflect off of these surfaces. Um, Someone while skiing can be getting a lot of reflection off of the snow. Same thing with the water. You can be in full shade under an umbrella, right? The umbrella is blocking the direct UV rays, which are coming down on you, but the reflection of the sun off the sand, off the water, can still reach you under the umbrella. Again, you can see when you're sitting under an umbrella. And so you have to be prepared for more than just the sun above you. And then one thing that I do, which I don't know, it sounds a little silly, but I keep sunscreen. Of course I do, but I keep sunscreen with me at all times. I have like a little bottle that I keep in my purse just for those times when, I'm not prepared. I keep some in my car. Um, I have to be careful of like extreme heat over the summer, but I do keep some in my car so that I'm not caught without it as well. I even have I have car hats as well.
Oh, that's a great idea. I like that. I always think about whenever we talk about the sun reflecting off of snow, I'm always reminded of my seventh grade ski trip where I had one of the worst sunburns of my life. And I had those awful like sunburn around the
Yeah.
goggles. And when you're 12 years old, it's really traumatic for many reasons. So don't be like me, everyone. Please wear your sunscreen when you're skiing. All right. Any other tips for our guests today, our attendees? What else can we be
Sure.
doing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is common sense, but it's good to have a refresher. So, staying in the shade is best, especially during the sun's peak hours, 10 to 4 p.m. Choosing to walk on the shady side of the street, bringing shade with you, parasols. I've seen sun umbrellas, pop-up shelters or tents. Um, I have a patient who told me about a backpack, a hiking backpack that has a little umbrella that pops up and it goes over her while she's hiking. I thought that was very cool. She
Fun.
loved it. Um, and look for products that are made from polyester fabric in darker shades with silver or black coating to help for maximum protection. Helping to install shade structures, sails, retractable awnings in your yard, your children's play spaces, local playgrounds can be really helpful. There's been a lot of innovation in patio umbrellas too. Just being sure to use sunscreen, wear that UPF protective clothing, hat and glasses, even while in the shade. And of course, I love those fisherman's hats that cover your ears and cover your neck. And then paying attention to where the sun is in the sky. Are you getting direct sun from overhead? Are you getting sun from kind of a different angle? All of this is kind of just helpful to keep in mind.
And we spoke a little bit about you just mentioned playgrounds, and we've seen that too. There's a lot more. There seems to me to that there's a lot more attention made to like shade structures over playgrounds, which is great. And we talked about protecting kids in the back seat. Anything else you'd like to say about protecting children? Any other things people can think about?
Yeah, I mean, it's so important. Children don't necessarily make the best choices or have the power to make their own choices. So it's really helpful that we help children be able to protect themselves. 25% of sun damage occurs before the age of 18. So it's important to set up good practices for children while they're young. And I would actually say also that it's important to model good practices for children while they're young. Remember, kids are looking at us not to see what we say or what we do for them, but what we do for ourselves. And those will be the practices that they set for themselves. So I always find that's very important to remind people of. As with adults, clothing is the first line of defense against skin cancer. Dressing babies in lightweight clothing that covers their arms and legs is a great first protection step. And then you can add on a wide brimmed hat that covers the baby's face, neck, and ears. And then use a stroller with a sun protective cover. And do your best to schedule walks, before 10 a.m., after 4 p.m. Avoid that strong midday sun. And while traveling in the car, a lot of cars actually already have a removable mesh window. You can add it, or some cars have it already installed, and you can just put that up over the baby's car window that they're next to block sunlight from reaching them. Or you can consider having your windows tinted. And then again, as your children are growing, becoming aware, protect your own skin, and then let your kids help out by applying their sunscreen, getting something easy for their little hands to manage, like a stick or roll-on formula. I think these are all very important things. And then teenagers, of course, different ball of wax. You explained that sun protection is an important part of a skincare regime. Will keep their skin looking young. And then, of course, let them know how dangerous indoor tanning is. Teach them about self-tanners instead.
We could have a whole other webinar just around the dangers of tanning and all the things that we try to do here to educate people about that. So we'll have to save that for another time. Some really great information, Dr. Buzney. Thank you so much for that. So we have just a couple of minutes here for questions. So if anyone has one, you'd like to type it into the Q&A feature. While we're waiting, I did want to say this is a question we've received at some of our other webinars, so I thought I would address it again. There's a lot of questions around what the Skin Cancer Foundation is doing to respond to all of the misinformation out there around sun exposure and sunscreen. And so it's something when I have the opportunity to talk about that a little bit, I like to take a minute or two to do so. And it's true, this is a huge problem. And Dr. Buzney, I'm sure you've seen this and maybe even gotten some questions from patients that you're kind of shocked that they're even asking you about. Yes, I see you nodding there. So pushing back against these claims is an enormous part of our educational efforts here at the Skin Cancer Foundation. And we work with experts like Dr. Buzney to address these claims and questions that come up in videos and blog posts. We circulate them on all of our social media channels. We rely on our physician experts to be spokespersons in the media. So this is another way that we educate the public. We're also writing about these issues in our annual magazine, the Skin Cancer Foundation Journal. And we make sure that all of our physicians, all the dermatologists we work with have these print materials, our journal and our other brochures in their office to share with patients. And just another thing I'll tease a little bit is we have a youth education program called SunSmart U that we debuted a number of years ago, and it's all around educating 7th through 12th graders around sun protection. And it's something that we are currently in the midst to redevelop for a new generation of students. So if anyone out there is interested in learning more about that program and what our plans are for it, certainly reach out to us and we'll be happy to share some more information about that. All right. So you also had mentioned the Skin Cancer Foundation seal of recommendation, which I hope everyone on the call is familiar with. And in case we didn't make it clear, Dr. Buzney and her fellow members of the photobiology committee are the experts who are deciding on the criteria for the sun protective products that earn our seal of recommendation. And we do award that seal to sunscreens, UPF fabrics, for clothing, awnings, umbrellas, window film, and tint, and other products as well. So if you are looking for products with the seal of recommendation, visit skincancer.org/seal, and you'll find information about the criteria, what a product has to do in order to earn the seal of recommendation. And we also have a product finder, so you can look up specific products to help you create that sun protection strategy that we've been talking about. All right, so we have one question here, and then I think we can wrap it up. And I think, Dr. Buzney, this is one for you. Does sunscreen go bad?
It's a great question. Sunscreen has a pretty long shelf life. And that's especially if it has been stored in a cool, dark place, meaning not left outside or in a hot car, right? Which of course is a problem for my car sunscreen, but still better to have it on hand than not have it at all. Most sunscreens are good for about 3 years, but check the date to be sure. And then it's good to have a newer backup ready to go. The date can be hard to find. Sometimes it's on the outer packaging or on the crimped end of a tube, or near on the bottom of a bottle or jar. And if you can't find an expiration date on the product you're using, it's a good practice to mark the month and year you purchased it. I have found some truly horrifyingly old sunscreens lying around in my house, and that is a very helpful thing to do. If you're continuously using a bottle of sunscreen for a few days, like on vacation, you're reapplying often, a good guide is that an 8-ounce bottle of sunscreen provides enough coverage for 2 to 3 days for one person spending the day outdoors.
Good rule of thumb. All right, so I think we will go ahead and wrap it up there. I hope everyone found this informative and helpful to you. And if you have any further questions about what you've heard today or any other work that the Skin Cancer Foundation is doing, please reach out to our corporate partnerships team. I think the address is going up on the screen. That's corporatecounsel@skincancer.org. So thank you again, Dr. Buzney, for being here and providing all this info. We really appreciate it. And thanks to all of you for participating in our webinar series and supporting and aligning with our mission. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.
Thank you all.